Seguimos en el SDN World Congress en Barcelona, que se está celebrando esta semana para tratar temas de SDN y de Virtual Network Virtualization, que son dos componentes de SDN. Y contamos con Sanjay de la empresa Vmware, que nos va a comentar un poquito sus productos sobre SDN, sobre todo en el data center. Sanjay, welcome to Telesemana. So the first thing I would like you to tell us is who your company is, so we have a background on who you are, and then we'll discuss a little bit more on your products on SDN.
Yes, VMware is the leader in virtualization and cloud computing for the data center, and we have a long history in delivering the best performing virtualization platform. Saves our customers lots of money, gives more efficiency, agility, choice of how you run your applications, and widest support of operating systems.
Okay. Now tell us why the data centers were virtualized in the first place. What they were trying to achieve with that virtualization?
So initially the reason for virtualization was to take advantage of the wasted CPU cycles in the data center. There were so many machines bought and they were hardly being used. And so the idea was, instead of buying more machines and using more power, just do more with what you already have.
Okay. So that's how SDN was born, so to speak?
No, that's how virtualization was born. That's how VMware got, and that's fundamentally VMware's original value proposition.
Okay. Virtualization. Yes. Now we come to SDN. Yes.
So SDN is, VMware realized that as you virtualize things, what was happening was that the first problem was we were able to put all these VMs out there, but then the other pieces of infrastructure were not quite keeping up because they had one-to-one mappings to servers. And here we had clusters of servers that could have hundreds of VMs on them, and you could never define what hardware they were connecting to. So that got to be a management problem. So it became really hard. Let's say, and it's not just about networking, but about the entire data center, about management, storage, and networking, all of which have to come together in a whole to make this work. So I can click a mouse and turn on a VM, but then if I have to spend 2 weeks with my IT team getting all the other pieces lined up to make that VM actually work and talk to the outside world, then it's not so much of an advantage. So we started with saying, well, let's automate the management. vCenter is very well known. We've got cloud-based solutions in vCloud Director. We did a lot of work with storage early on, given that we're owned mostly by EMC. That's not surprising. But we support all the major storage vendors in terms of integrations, and so essentially your storage can connect in a dynamic way to your virtual machines instead of having this physical hardwired one-to-one mapping, which is what has traditionally been in the storage space. So now we come to networking, and so networking is essentially the last link here, where we realized unless we solve the networking problem, we don't finish that goal to have. And the goal is to have all your resources be pooled and just selected dynamically as you need them. And so that's why VMware got into SDN.
Okay. Now, from the experience that you have from the data center, and where you have already commercial products that are being used to virtualize and manage data centers, how can that be transported to the telco environment, where I'm assuming probably there's a little bit more of complexity than what probably you faced when implementing SDN or virtualization on the data centers. So tell us what you've learned on the data center that can be transported to the telco environment.
Yeah, well, I think a lot can be transported into the telco environments. First of all, being able to, some of the things we've had for a long time fit really well with a telco environment. For example, the fact that we support over 80 operating systems and actually can run many more that aren't even on the market, right? And as you know, in telco environment, there are lots of operating systems that aren't on the market. They're custom. Yep. They can still run in a virtual machine. We can run 7-year-old versions of Monte Vista in a VM, and there are telco equipment out there that is running this kind of stuff, right? It can run, right, with the appropriate tuning, and if we work on a project, you can get pretty much anything working in a VM, in a VMware VM. We have the experts in the business on doing that. What we can also transport is all of our capabilities in terms of understanding the resources used in a cluster and saying that, okay, I've got to run certain workloads on a cluster, but then I add some more workloads. Which servers do I put them on? Well, VMware solved that problem in the data center long ago. Something called this distributed resource scheduler, where we just say, turn on these set of VMs, and we'll figure out where to turn them on. And because of the shared storage across the cluster and now the shared networking, it means it doesn't matter which server it runs on. We can make it work. Then things like high availability come into play. We have a way of detecting when virtual machines fail or when hosts fail, and of making sure we automatically get those things restarted somewhere else. And then in maintenance, the typical problem of, I have a maintenance window where I need to remove the bad cards, and I need to send someone out to a remote site at 2 in the morning when there's less phone usage so they can pull out the bad card. Well, that's not a problem anymore when you can vMotion. So what you can do is say, I can move these running VMs from one card to another card, and while they're running. And then now this card is running, but it has no VMs on it, so I can turn it off and I can pull it out. And you don't have to wait till the maintenance window. And you also get faster time to redundancy, because if you think about it, when you fail and you have to send someone out, that's a 4-hour time to redundancy. And you have to shut something off and you have an impact. Versus failover, then start up a backup VM as soon as you fail over. So that's maybe 5 minutes later, not hours, minutes. And physically removing the bad card, that can be a monthly maintenance sweep. If you see how some of the large cloud providers deal with their data centers, they leave bad equipment in place and once in a while go and roll them out. Imagine if you could do that in telco environments, how much money it would save in operations to do that. Well, we think our platform is the best to enable that capability.
How far away are we from seeing SDN and virtualization on the telco environment? I know it's, here this is the first show, or kind of the first movement on that space, so I think it's a bit vague in terms of when things are going to happen. But based on your experience on when you started developing virtualization and SDN for the data center, how long it took for the data center to actually be able to be virtualized and SDNized?
Well, I think these are two different markets, so I don't think you can extrapolate one to the other. We do know that the telco industry is, fairly conservative, and they roll out things also in a staged manner. So it's not just flip a switch; it's marketed, so now everyone's going to buy it, right? I'll roll it out here and there and wherever. So, yeah. So, I don't think I could give timeframes, but I could say that we are constantly pushing the envelope on our performance, and if you think that we don't perform well enough, talk to us. We would love to work with you and figure out why you think that, because we believe that there isn't anything that shouldn't be virtualized. And so, if there's a problem, we have people who are working on fixing those and really making sure we have the absolute best platform. And then, in terms of SDN, again, it's going to depend on which workloads end up working in and end up getting actually deployed in the market. And depending on that, there's so many possible features. When people list SDN, they list everything we can run on it. And what we have to do is work on it from a standpoint of what is it people find actually valuable virtualizing, and then from there we can figure out what features we would do or when they would be done. But I'd say the priority is in making sure we have the best virtualization platform.
That's the beginning of everything.
Yeah.
Now, final question. What is your take on the Open Daylight organization or initiative in terms of having this open source SDN initiative?
Well, I think it's more about, again, as I said earlier, let's see what gets virtualized and deployed, and then based on that, the right solutions can be chosen. You know, that's right now. It's too early to say, you know, what's going to be, you know, or what's going to be deployed in a carrier network. Right? That's a complex question.
So just to clarify, because many times with all the interviews here, network function virtualization, which is, I guess is what you're talking about, and SDN, it seems to me we're not talking about the egg and the chicken here. First is network virtualization, then it's SDN.
Yeah, so they're two different things, and I think there's confusion there, and that's and let's be really clear. Network function virtualization is about taking telco workloads and putting them in a VM so that you can then do multi-tenancy, you can run them independent of hardware, right? So by itself, it is not SDN. It's just taking workloads that are things that need to be done in a telco network, and instead of running them directly on hardware, running them in a virtual machine on some type of server. And that, as I said, that's our priority. Make our hypervisor performant enough to be able to run those workloads.
And then SDN comes in.
That is, you know, let's get the first thing done first, because and if again if there's any workload that people think are, you know, oh, I could not virtualize this or it doesn't work in a VM, please talk to us, because, you know, we'd like to understand what it is. We'd like to understand, you know, sometimes we find that because of the conservatism of the industry, people are running like 3 versions old of the software, which for us is an eternity. So, you know, things like that. We have a set of best practices on low latency virtualization. We've published a white paper, how to handle, you know, how to change the way interrupts are handled, turn off interrupt coalescing. There are all these tunable parameters that you need to set just right in order to tune the platform, because well, a typical IT user wants to get the most out of their CPU. A telco user would rather waste CPU and reduce their latency. Okay. And so we have a paper published on how to change those parameters.
Well, Sanjay, thank you so much for your time, and have a good show.
Okay.
Thank you.